Hello guys, welcome. Today is December 29th, the last trading day of 2023, and what a day it was. We started slow, we had little loss at open, but then we had a big fade, huge selling, which we capitalized by having some good short trades, and then we had a big reversal, and then we capitalized on some reversals. So overall, it was a very hectic, productive day, and definitely morning losers turned into winners. And we did not trade too many tickers. I personally did not, but it was all about the marketplace today, right? So I will go through that. So I will go through everything how we nailed in the community. Very green day for community. Most of the traders were there were some traders red. There was 20-30% red because they moved on after the morning losses, but most of the traders stayed and they executed and ended the year on high note. But that's okay. New year start, very excited for that. But before we do that, let's complete today's review. If you want to watch just a particular ticker, you can click the chapters down below and just go to that ticker. So I'm going to cover today NVIDIA, Coin, Tesla, AMD, SMCI, BIDU, and Microsoft, and of course SPY, QQQ SPX IWM. So anybody who's my new follower or new member of community or new Twitter follower, these are my recaps from my community or my Twitter trade ideas. And every day I get up 1 hour before the market opens. I review everything, what's going on in the market. We do a wake up summary like the one you see here. In the wake up summary, we review the main things going around in the world. You can see the NVIDIA news out of China on the wake up summary. Then after that, we review other pre-market gappers, right? Gap ups, gap downs, analyst notes. So there was not so much today. After I review that, then what I do is I review all the news. I create a watch list for us to play, and I make a plan for that in the pre-market. I give these pre-market levels. What you can do is you can pause the screen and go back and see how most of these levels panned out, especially on IWM short, which we'll discuss in a bit, SMCI short, how these two levels panned out, and of course Tesla bearishness and among others. So you can review all these and see how the levels panned out, how the NVIDIA levels panned out, the 500 resistance, 498 resistance, all these resistances. I will go to individually through some of our plays, some of our winners, but it's good to learn the importance of levels that I draw every day before the market opens for my community members. Alright guys, first of all I'm going to start with SPY, QQQ, IWM. These were the all day shorts for us and how they panned out. We'll talk about that. Before I do that, let's look at the levels for each one of them. For SPY, QQQ, what were our levels, what we were looking at. So SPY level, as I showed you the screen earlier, the level I gave was support was 476.40, right? So this was my level, 476.40, right here, 476.40. And what happened after 476.40? You just went crazy. SPY puts went 100-300%, SPX puts went 300%. So that's why these pivots are very important, and you have to play with them clouds. And of course, I was on the voice telling everybody about the short. And let's see what happened to QQQ. The support pivot was 410.80. 410.80. What happened after the 410 pivot, bro? The flush, right? Again, from my levels. That's the level I gave everyone. And let's look at IWM level. IWM 203.60, 203.40. What does it say? If support breaks, that's a short idea under the EMA clouds. And what happened to IWM? IWM went from 203.60, 203.60 and 203.40 when they gave up, initial bounce, but that's fine, still under EMA cloud. You can use the risk of the top of the candle and the fade. Let's see what my guidance was. I was on the voice, but we can take a look my live guidance and alerts so that everybody could understand what I'm looking at and trade them. So you can see QQQ was, QQQ was trying to push over 3450 clouds, but it rejected at 10 a.m. guys. So all these things, right, happens at 10 a.m. So rejection at 10 a.m. That's my 10 a.m. rule. I teach again and again. And then if I said if it holds the pre-market lows, then we can chop. Otherwise, we'll short. That was at 10 a.m. And then what happened? Flush, boom, boom, boom. And I said heavy, stay short, do not long, stay short. Even at 11:25, I was saying it's a short, stay short, and then it faded more. Try to bounce, faded more, right? So you can clearly see, and then you can look at my IWM guidance. It was heavy. I even tweeted about it. It was under the pivots. I talked about under the pivots, and that's how it works. And now let's look at what was it? SPY, right? Yeah. So SPY bearish, and I was talking about only short scalps, heavy, and then it's in the end of the day. So anyways, so everybody was green on those shorts. Let me show you. If somebody is new, I can just show them how. So as you see on this flush, this is why I'm proud of everyone. Everybody was short because when market SPY QQQ is flushing, it's falling down. That means you can short any tech, anything that's part of the market, and we will look at individual names as well. But I wanted to point out that how everybody in the community was, somebody was short on Tesla, somebody was short on Netflix, and we will look at them individually as well. But the point is, we nailed this flush. We were not long. Nobody was trying to long or find the dips. We nailed this short setup. We nailed this short on IWM. So we nailed this IWM short, we nailed this SPY short, and nailed this QQQ short. All with proper guidance, repeatable setup, our EMA Cloud System, no blind trading, everything with risk reward, repeatable. Just look at the risk reward here. Yeah, even if you risk the EMA Clouds here, right? Just even if you were trading short QQQ, you risk like 70-80 cents, and you made almost $3. So look at the risk reward, and that risk reward on options, especially on SPX and others or QQQs, turns out 300-400%. So you should be able to capitalize on this move. And then I also talked about this 475 level. If I show you, let me show you, because this 475 level was important, because this 475 level was being held for few days. So we knew that if it breaks that 475, then it's going to be there's going to be a big flush, right? So if you see here, I even tweeted about it, that 475 level has been held for few days. It's going to be a huge level. Keep an eye. And then 475 was gone, and then bloom. Look at this put. Look at this SPX option, right? I bought it at $5. It went as high as $20, right? So you invest $500, you made $1,500. So that's how you capitalize on these moves, guys. That's why I make these recaps, to show you these are the A+ setups, rather than just trading randomly and just scalping anything you see. Stick with these A+ short setups. So alright guys, so you saw the levels, you saw the guidance. That's how we nailed it. Let's move to the next one. Alright guys, the next one we are going to look is coin. So coin, I said in the pre-market we were waiting for this 188 breakout, but we never got that 188 breakout, and coin went under the clouds, and that's when I said it's weak. Watch the pops to short it versus the clouds. And guess then what happened? And then it started to fade. You take a starter, you put your stops here over the clouds. If it keeps failing, you hold it, or you add on the bounce, and when it re-breaks the lows, you add into that position. So you add into that position, and then you hold the shorts. No long. I mean, look at this beautiful fade. It went from 187 to all the way to 171. And this was one of my Lottos which I added later, right? I traded on the top, then I used my profit, and even that Lotto went 100%. And my first target was 180. My first target was 180. We hit the 180, then my target was 177. We hit 177. Then my target was 171, and look at what we hit. We hit exactly 171 target. That was exactly the low of the day, guys. Right, so you can screenshot, see my guidance, see how the price moved on based upon my guidance. But this was flawless trade today. Very proud of coin. Everybody was short coin in the community. This was enough to make good profits today, guys. So beautiful setup, repeatable. One thing I want to point out is look at this 1 hour. This is the first time it broke the clouds on 1 hour. So when it breaks the cloud on 1 hour, that's always a great trigger of trend change. Now the 1 hour trend has changed. If it cannot reclaim the 1 hour trend, it's going to fade more. So that's how you watch the trend, guys. That's what I teach in my webinars. That's how you watch the trend. All right, guys, let's talk about Tesla. Same story as yesterday, So for Tesla, for me, it was a short. It was a short. So since the open, it was simple, right? So Tesla was simple. It was under the clouds, and I gave the pivot levels. Let's look at the pivot levels on Tesla. What were my pivot levels? My pivot levels were Tesla were 253.80, 252.30. Resistance was 256.50. And I said if it breaks that pivot level, it's a short idea, right? So you have to be ready. So most of it was my voice guidance. I think Win did a C minus bounce scalp, and then he left it. But I told everybody no long, very bearish, only short, no long. And I said it under 250 can fade more, do not long. And by the, I said at 10 a.m. and even at 10 a.m., where was it? It was right here, 253s. It was breaking all my pivots. And by end of the day, it hit 47, 43, 250. So, I'm more proud, even if you miss the short, I'm more proud of people who were not buying the dips. That is key. You do not buy the dips on these fades. You stay short or you don't touch it. Those are the only things you can do, right? So all right, guys, next one. I just want to look at AMD quickly. My trade was long in the morning. That was profitable. We got out of AMD profitable before the flush. I did not short it. I missed the short, but anyways, you can see I was watching this 150 breakout. I told everybody at open. We pushed to 150 one few times, 150, 70. So the calls moved like, for some people the calls did move almost 70, 80% because Lottos they move fast, and some people were traded that. For some people they move fast because they got a good entry. For me, they moved decent, not really crazy, 30% maybe. And it was but like I said, when this market pukes, your shorts, longs are not going to work out. QQQ was under the clouds, SPY was under the clouds and fading, so it's not going to work out. So I closed once this 512 broke. I closed my last long from the open, right, which I was trying to long. But the key is this, right, guys, the short. That is the key. If you want to look at the levels that I gave on let's look at AMD. So the level I had was 146.65, 148.65, 149.20. So 149.20. Look at this level. When this pivot breaks under the cloud, what are my rules? Short. So that was a very good short. I'm proud of the people who were executing it themselves. I'm very proud of that, because under the clouds, breaking the pivot 1, breaking the pivot 2, and then going to the pivot 3. Pivot T, going to the lows of the day. From yesterday's highs right here became a support here. Support becomes resistance becomes a support. But anyways, guys, just wanted to recap quickly. Was a good short scalp at open and good a short for anybody who got it. But let's look at the next one. So now I'm gonna look at a trade, a loser in the morning, which got me. So I was in a starter, mind you, I was in a starter. I was waiting for my 500 breakout. So I was long, but I was in a Lotto. So Lottos are more risky. So I was hoping we break out. You know, had a starter entry at open, bought the dip entry as well. We were trying to push, and when it finally failed, I had to stop out. And since I was in Lottos, I lost most of that. You know, if you can see what I said about NVIDIA here, let's look. Let's see, we can take a look here. So yeah, here's my guidance on NVIDIA. So I was starter long for 500 breakout. I said I will add more at 500 breakout, and 498 was the key level that I wanted it to hold, and I was only the starter size. And then finally, when it broke down, that's when I said that I'm out. I took a loss, right? And that's when I took a loss here. So it was a losing trade at the open. But now, when I took a loss and I saw the market puking, and I told everybody it's no longer a long, guys. NVIDIA is no longer a long, it is a short. And then all the pivot levels that I give, it started to break down. And then I decided to scalp it short. You know, I started to scalp it short and I started giving my targets to everybody. And you know, let's look at here when it was breaking down here, right here, this pivot, then of course it could fade more. My target was first 488, so that was the target that I gave everybody at 488, right? And I told them it's no long, it's very heavy. It's a C minus setup. I was talking about it on the voice. If you want to see my levels, let's go to the levels, right? So let's look at the levels. So what was the level on NVIDIA, right? 495, 496.60, 496.60 right here, 495. You take a short here and then you scalp. I was a little late on it. I took a short later here and I risked this area and I still got a decent returns on NVIDIA. Let's see if I can show you some of my trades. Oh, that's a Lotto trade. We'll talk about that later. But anyways, the point was you took a loss once it converted a bearish, breaking the pivots. You know market is bearish, so you just short it. You know, we were shorting market and making our money back on the earlier loss. I was short coin, making money back on there, but then I could also scalp this NVIDIA short, right? So, and it clearly hit my target. Look the target that I gave, and it hit there. And I said, no need to play. It's a C minus long, because some people wanted it to bounce here at 492s. I said no, it's not a long, right? That's my teaching. It's a bearish trend. And even from 492 it went to 487. Even that move, the puts went 100% on just on that Lotto move alone. So that's what I'm talking about. And you know, so that's where we made all our money back. Look at the move. This loss was smaller, but this move, so if this was 1 hour move, this was 4 hour move. Compare this area where we took the loss to this whole area. So if you just left taking the loss, you left and you didn't do anything, then you miss this opportunity, which you should take, because when the pivots break, you get the flush. And do not forget that you know, SPY QQQ were bearish. So yeah, so NVIDIA from the loss to win, but the real fun came at the end of the day. Let's check that out. So the real fun came in the end. I was a little late on NVIDIA, but let's see. So we saw the flush, my 488 target, NVIDIA bounced from there. There's still no long here. It's a C minus long. Never do it. I don't like to do it. But it created a cup and handle. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect, guys, but it is a cup and handle. Makes a cup, pulls back, holds a higher lows, makes a handle, and then pushes higher. So you see, and then that's, you can long small size there. That is fine. And I did say that NVIDIA is curling from 512, and the golden rule is when it curls from 512, it pushes to 3450. And then when it pushed over 3450, Vinod on the floor started talking about the flow. He started talking about the flow on NVIDIA that was coming in. It was 500 flow at that push, and I saw the strength. And then, I took some Lottos. I mentioned on the floor that I'm taking the Lottos. I mentioned that. Let's see if I can show you guys here. So I said NVIDIA Lottos are priced nicely. I threw some money in the Lottos. And those Lottos, guys, I had at 17 cents, 14 cents, 42 cents. 17, 14 cents one went up almost as a 600%, 500%. They ended up going close to dollar, and the 497.50 Lotto, went 300%. So it was risk it all, right? So you can see the Lottos went 300 to 500% because of this move, because of this EMA Cloud System, this cup and handle confidence. Right, and not only that, market, we talked about the market curl as well. So market was curling too, right? So market SPY and QQQ, they were curling too right here. They were curling, similar setup. QQQ was turning bullish, so it was helping NVIDIA. And flow, so three things combined: EMA Cloud System, the flow, the price action, and the market, right? So you see how we were still finding opportunities to trade and make money. You could have traded shares, anything. I had some profit to play with, so I did the Lottos. So easier to turn those $1,000 to few $1,000s. So these are the opportunities you can't miss. So these were the midday, end of the day setups, which I will talk about in one of my community webinars. But this was a definitely great example today. NVIDIA, was today best example of the system. That's what I said. I said power of Ripster EMA clouds cannot be exemplified more than from this NVIDIA trade up and down today. No system is perfect or a magic wand, but you have to have a baseline to execute. When a system works, do not be a penny pincher. Let it work, and small losers, big winners. So you can see cup and handle breakout, and the push over the clouds. All right, guys. So let's go to the next one. Few of the trades I'm going to discuss, which were not my personal trades, but trades by Kyle and others in the community. Let's look at Netflix. So Netflix, the pivot was 488.7. An amazing call by Kyle on Netflix all day. If we look at Kyle's commentary, I love so many smart people in the community. So he was short Netflix. As you saw, it broke the pivot, and you could short anything. Basically, you short anything you like. You short it because the market was heavy. And look at the focus that Kyle had on Netflix. So he was all day short, talking about Netflix, right? And all day, hourly, and so that's what I love to see. And you saw my pivot. So Netflix breaks the pivot, and it breaking the 1 hour trend. 482 was the ultimate target, and then it kind of did hit that 482. I think that's what it was. Yeah, so you see the 482 has room to 482. You can see my comments here. Netflix has room to 482. So beautiful trade, guys. Simple, no magic needed, no alerts needed. Your confidence levels and system, again, repeatable. So let's look at another one, guys. I think it was SMCI. So you can see SMCI was a fade as well. We will look at our levels, and same concept. The reason I'm showing you this is that you could trade anything when the market is trending like today. And one thing I always teach is you need to understand when market is choppy and trending. When you see the pre-market lows, highs break down or break up, you know that we're going to have some kind of trend either side. Anyway, so let's look at levels for SMCI. So SMCI, my level was, let's look at it, 290. Resistance was 293. The moment it broke 290, fade under the clouds, right? So again, repeatable setups, level and system, all you need. Another one I want to look at again is, we can look at both Meta and Amazon, so Meta and Amazon. So let's just look at Meta, because Meta was more bearish right out of the gate. Meta was more bearish, right? So let's look at levels for Meta. I'm just going through this because I want to show you importance of the levels. So Meta, the levels I gave in the pre-market were 358. I probably it meant 258, 358. Yeah, not 2. It meant 358 and 357.81. So 358 right here. This was the level, and you can see the fade. So that's the beauty of the pivot levels, guys. Beauty of the pivot level. So let's look at BIDU, guys. Before the market tanked, BIDU was paying us really good. Let me talk about the BIDU. BIDU was my bullish bias. It was our day 2 setup, and we were long. I was on the voice talking about BIDU, and that you can lock the profit or you can hold it. And it was holding this EMA Clouds. It really pushed nicely to 120. I mean, it was a decent move on the options, but then the market puked. You had to get out at the 512. When you see the market weak, you have to be proactive to close your trades, right? But if you're in swing and you have a good entry, then you watch the 1 hour. That is fine. You can hold because you're trading the 1 hour charts. But if you're intraday trading, you need to take the stops out, right? So just wanted to recap BIDU. So let's recap Microsoft. Yeah, so Microsoft was it was a nice breakout setup. Like you see, I longed for that breakout. It was kind of working fine, and then market puked, so I had to take a stop out at 512 EMA Clouds. If you want to look at the levels, so yeah, I took a small loss there on, like I say, in the morning we had these few losses. And if you want to look at the Microsoft level, my support pivot was 375.40 and resistance 376.40, 375.40. You see when 375.40 gave up and it flushed so much, right? So if I didn't take my stops here, which was my another pivot, 376.40, you see there, then I would have been in loss. So I cannot hold from here till here. I had to get out. So just to let you know, guys, and luckily we had a nice day fade on other names, so we made profit on other names and we got out of this one. So that's how we need to keep eyes on it. The daily setup is still there. It's still not void. Look at the V recovery. So we watch it again for long next week if market is strong. I really like the Microsoft setup there, guys. All right, guys, that's it. I'll see you next year now. Just a couple more days to the new year, and we have also our promo extended for membership of community until the new year. So you can join if you want to join a community. We treat like your family and learn and execute together. Do not join for alerts, come for education and guidance. All right, guys, take care. Bye bye. Thank you.